Hi everybody, welcome to this week's lecture on musical elements. I'm going to be covering the content that's covered here, so if you'd like to open up the resources under musical elements, feel free. What are musical elements? Well, musical elements are what the actual instruments play. So we have talked about the different instruments and the different parts, but when they make sound, they actually play different things, and there's different types of things they can play. They can play short sounds, long sounds, complex sounds, simple sounds, and we're going to talk about those different types of sounds. This will really be the last technical component of music that you're going to be listening for. We've listened to song form, we've listened to rhythm and tempo, we've listened to parts and instruments, and now we're going to finish that up with listening to the actual elements those instruments are playing in those parts. So let's take a look at our first element for the day. It is called a pad. And a pad is very simple. It's a long note or set of notes that's held for a period of time. Okay, let's take a look at what a pad is. Okay, I'm going to start by entering a note in here that will serve as a pad. I'll do that just by clicking like this. And a pad is a long held note. Okay, I'm going to draw in our first musical element, which will be a pad. I'm going to go ahead and put it here on the note C. Okay, so this pad is lasting this whole measure. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and you'll see the scroll bar move across this, and you'll hear the sound of the pad holding. And when the pad stops, it goes away. Now I'm going to loop through this, and you can hear it again. A pad is usually or often a whole note, so I just switched the view here from piano roll to score, and you'll see a whole note right there, held out for that pad, okay? I could even lengthen it to 2 measures long. Watch this, or listen to this. Keeps holding. Pads can be all over the place. They can be high. I could drag it way up here. I could drag it way down low. There's pads in the bass, there's pads in the accompaniment, and there are pads sometimes in the lead part, although not for very long. Usually we need a melody in the lead, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So I'm going to put this pad kind of in the middle here in the accompaniment part like this, and we're going to add the next element to it. Our next element is a pedal, okay? And a pedal is similar to a pad. It's a single note, but instead of it being held, it's repeated over and over and over. Let me show you what that is. Okay, so I'm going to draw in a pedal now, which is a short repeating note. Now, in order to be repeating, the note needs to be shorter, so usually it's not going to be a whole note or even a half note. Usually pedals are quarter notes or eighth notes, sometimes even 16th. Eighth is the most common, especially in rock and roll, so I'm going to draw in some eighth notes here, and I'll use the exact same note that I used for the pad, which was this C note right here. I'm going to put in some eighth notes here. Let's listen to that. And you'll hear there were 8 of them in one measure. Okay, that's a pedal. That's how it works. And I can keep repeating that. You'll hear this a lot in 80s rock and roll. Looping through that. So that is a pedal. This here is a pad. Same note. Now we can play those at the same time. So let me go down here, and I'm going to actually have them both playing. And I'm going to move the pad, actually I'm going to move the pedal down a little bit. We'll put the pedal like here, and we'll put the pad there. And now we'll have the pad playing on the top and the pedal below. See if you can hear them both. So there's the pedal, the repeating note, and here's the pad. The held note, and here they are both together. Okay, these are both in the accompaniment part, but pads and pedals can be used in the accompaniment and bass, sometimes the lead, but usually the accompaniment and the bass. Okay, the next element I want to show you is a riff. Now, riff is a different set of notes. It's not just one note repeated over and over or one note held. It's a collection of 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 notes that is played in a pattern, and that pattern is very short, and that pattern is repeated a lot. This is the basis for most rock and roll and EDM and hip-hop that we listen to now. Our music is very riff based. Let me show you how a riff is made. Okay, the basic way to start a riff is to begin with a pedal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to go put the riff in the bass for right now. The riff could be in the bass or the accompaniment. And actually leads now too a lot. So if we started with a basic pedal like this in the bass, I'll go ahead and play it. We have a pedal, okay? But let's say we want to change that up a little bit. If we change up even one little thing, we can end up with a riff. Let me show you how that works. Let me just take out this note here. And I'm going to actually shorten our cycle so that we're not looping through the whole thing. Riffs are often, like I said, short and repetitive, so often there'll be only one or two measures. For the purposes of this class, that is a riff because it is not constantly repeating the notes. We're changing just one. Now this is pretty close to a pedal, but I would consider this a riff because it's not repeating. If it was repeating that note right here, then it would be constant. Okay, that's a pedal. Okay, I'm going to make the riff a little more interesting. I've added one other note here. Let me add one other one too, just to make it a little more interesting. So we've had 3 different notes we're listening to played in a pattern. This note's played 4 times, this one once, and this one once. That's a riff. Riffs can be in the accompaniment, bass, or lead as well. Okay, if I move this up here higher, it would sound higher. Or I could have more in the mid-range in the accompaniment. But for this awesome song, I'm going to have it in the bass. Okay, and then what's neat is I can bring back in the accompaniment part, right? Because we learned how to bring those have these different parts playing one. So here we're going to listen to, see if we can hear the bass part and the accompaniment part. The bass part's playing this riff, and the accompaniment part is playing this pedal. Let's see if we can hear them both. Okay, so here's those 2 parts together. You can hear the pedal going da 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 da, and the bass underneath do 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 do. And then we can even add that pad back in. Let's see if we can't get the pad in there. And you'll see the pad's going to come in over the top right there. You see the pad? So now we've got a riff on the bottom, a pad on the top, and pedal in the middle. In terms of parts, this would be the bass part. These 2 would probably both serve as an accompaniment. Why do I call these accompaniment instead of calling this one a lead? Well, it's because to be in the lead, it has to hold our interest. Pads and pedals are very repetitive, which means we lose interest in them. Riffs are the next most repetitive, so they'll hold our interest for maybe 4 bars before we get tired of them. And melody has a longer phrase. Let's talk about melody a little bit. It's a long sequence of notes that's tied together in a conclusive phrase, and a melody is mimicking the idea of a sentence. We're very used to people talking and speaking sentences, and then at the end of the sentence they usually have to breathe. And when they breathe, they take a pause. So when we hear this rhythmic flow of notes and then some sort of pause in between them, our ears are very attuned to it, and it holds our attention for long periods of time. In fact, entire songs can be melodies. Sometimes it's just the melody of a song. Usually the melodies are longer, so whereas pads are a single note, pedals are a single note repeated, riffs are a short pattern of notes, a melody becomes a longer sequence of notes. I've actually created a melody here. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you and put it on here. And you'll see already that it is stretching out longer than my other notes. Okay, you'll see here that to get the whole melody, it has to last 4 bars. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, and then what I'm going to do is repeat the bass and the accompaniment part. So we have the bass part down here, we have the accompaniment parts here, and then the melody is over the top like this. Okay, when I go to add the melody part, you'll see it needs to be longer here. My melody is about 4 bars long in this case, again because it's mimicking the idea of a sentence or a phrase. My riff is quite short. My riff is only 1 measure long. My accompaniment parts are 2 measures long, although in this case they're just repeating the same notes, so they could almost probably be 1 measure long. But I have them at 2 measures just for this example. So let me go ahead and repeat these. We'll see the whole song coming together here. We're going to have a riff in the bass. We're going to have a pedal in the accompaniment. We're going to have a pad in the accompaniment. And then we're going to have a melody in the lead. Let's listen to just that melody first, okay? You'll hear how it's like a sentence, and then you'll hear this big pause coming in right here. rest. This is where a person will be breathing, and they start talking again. Now that would fit. I can start to play the pad. So now I have the pad going. Long held notes in the pad, and then a pedal. I'm going to add the riff. That's it. That's how our music's put together. All we need to do is add a drum beat, which is the next element I want to show you. Beat right here. It's just like a riff. A beat is a riff, but on percussive instruments. So it doesn't have any pitch to it. No long held out notes. You can't sing it. You can just make sound effects to do it. That sort of thing. So we're going to add the beat, and a beat like a riff is a short repetitive set of notes. It's usually only 1 or 2 bars long. I'm going to go ahead and put in the most basic beat we've been talking about, which is we're going to put the kick on beat 1, snare on beat 2, kick on beat 3, snare on beat 4, and we're going to have those hi-hats going every 8th note right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me solo that for you so you can hear that. Just the beat. What's that? Now I'm going to add to that. I'm going to go ahead and add the riff, our bass riff to it. And then I can bring in that pedal. So I've got the beat, the riff, and the pedal going. Now I'm going to add the pad. Here it comes. Okay, and now I'm going to bring in the melody here. Here it comes. I'm hoping you can hear all those parts playing at once. This is very common in the music we listen to, whether it's rock, EDM, jazz, country, or hip-hop. We usually have some sort of bass part, country part, lead part, playing a combination of riffs, pads, and pedals, and a melody with a beat underlying them all. The next element I want to introduce to you is a fill. Now a fill is a very short set of notes that takes the lead for just a second. It comes in, introduces itself, says hello, and then goes away. It's not like a riff that keeps playing over and over. It just plays one time. Drum fill is a perfect example of that. I've put a little fill here in this example that we can listen to, and you'll see it's right here. It just comes in on measure 4, and I put it there because if you look at the melody came down, and then just for a quick second, there's a little hole here. That's a perfect place to put a fill. Jazz does a lot of this, where there's someone singing, and then the horns will come in and kind of fill that spot. But rock and roll does too. Often it'll be like the lead guitar does a little lick there, or the drums will have a fill, like a drum roll. See if you can hear that fill. So I'm going to play the melody, and then you'll hear the fill come in. Here it goes. And then the little fill. It's kind of a silly fill, but I can bring the beat back in now. And I'll bring in the riff. There's the riff playing down there. I'm going to add that pad back in. And lastly, the pedal. I'll bring the pedal back in. And we'll have our whole song. Now the last element I want to introduce to you is a break. A break is just when something stops. It's really simple, so I can do that real easily in our song here. Let's say we go to the, we want to stop the pedal for a second there. If you're listening to this now, you should hear the pedal stop. And I might stop the riff at the same time so you can hear it, and maybe even the pad so you can really hear that. A lot of it stopped there, right? I could even stop the beat there if I wanted. start back up. So there's a big break right there. A break might happen in a section, right? The bass might not be playing in the verse, or the rhythm might not be playing in the bridge. That's very common, to drop parts out for a section. When you're listening through a song, I want you to be able to identify those things. You're going to be listening to when an element starts or stops. Also, different elements might happen in different sections of the song. Like very often the bass will be playing something simple like a pad or a pedal during the verse, and then when it gets to the chorus, it starts playing a riff to emphasize that section of the song.